Typical question I get about Tacoma is quality of life. And obviously people want to know, really how a city ranks in terms of just livability. And it makes sense because obviously you want to make sure that wherever you're investing all your money in is going to be a good place for you to actually live. Because purchasing homes obviously is a big decision, and you want to make sure that you're going to be comfortable and that it is a community that is continuously growing. Tacoma is one of those cities that people really and truly question, is it the right place to live? And to be honest with you, a lot of people are a little bit afraid of Tacoma because of past stereotypes of Tacoma, which really and truly are not there. I'm trying to find this ranking real quick, which is really and truly not the case any longer. You know, someone asked me just today, is crime better or worse in Tacoma from the past? Is it getting better or is it getting worse? And my answer to them was it's getting better for many different reasons. One, there's a lot of economic development here, so that changes things. Two, there's more jobs that are coming in that are higher paying jobs. That changes the dynamics. A lot of people are moving down from Seattle, and people come from other areas moving into Tacoma. They want to have a city vibe versus a more rural or suburban vibe. So that's changing the dynamics. So a lot of the crime issues that had happened in the past are starting to go down a little bit. Keep in mind also additional police officers, better schools than in the past. All of those things really does help Tacoma. Now, Tacoma is still, based on metrics, has the highest crime rate of any city in the state of Washington. It just is. And they're looking at per capita. So if you look at the amount of crime versus the population, it's still ranked higher, but that doesn't necessarily mean that as soon as you walk out the door, you're going to hear bullets flying and issues. It's just not really like that. It's really situational, and it's based on the neighborhood and area that you're in. When you look at Tacoma, some of the cities that you hear quite a bit about, and I mentioned Puyallup as being one of the cities that we had thought to look at. Actually, when you look at, and this is based on niche.com, and I go there to take a look at some things because some of it I agree with, some of it I don't, but generally they're kind of on track. But Puyallup is ranked lower than Tacoma. It's ranked at 19 when we're looking at just places in Pierce County. I'm going to try to focus on Pierce County because people tend to say, well, you know, what about all these other places? When you look at places like Midland and Edgewood and all of these other places, they also rank lower than Tacoma. Okay, Tacoma is actually ranked, I think it was at 14. So it even beats Sumner. Tacoma is ranked at 14. And the reason for that is because Tacoma has changed dramatically. It used to be that education was one of along with crime, was a sore point for Tacoma. That's really not the case. Now people in Tacoma graduate at much higher rates than they do even in Seattle. And that's due to initiatives that were done here not long ago in Tacoma that continue on to this day. There was a big issue of having high school graduates continue on. And so now that's changing quite a bit. You throw in the mix that University of Washington Tacoma is right downtown, which hadn't always been there. That was added in the 1990s. And so that also kind of helped because people are able to actually see like, hey, you can easily move from, from high school to college, and it'd be a good college that you can afford. There are other universities here. Puget Sound is, I think it's called Puget Sound. There's another university here, but it's very expensive, and it's a private college, private university. I put the name down in the, like here, but it's very expensive. So a lot of people kind of just said, if I go to high school and I get out, what am I going to do? I mean, I can't afford University of Washington up in Seattle, which is very expensive. They couldn't afford the Puget Sound University here. I think that's what it's called. And the only other thing was the community college here in Tacoma, but you couldn't really get farther than that. Hold on one second. I'm expecting a delivery. Okay, so that wasn't the delivery that I was hoping for. So anyhow, Tacoma was stuck in a place of issues, but now it has actually changed drastically when it comes to the educational front. Again, with having so many people moving in, the amount of different companies coming in, the educational system has actually started to shift and actually go into a positive direction. So a lot of people, their question was, how good are the schools in Tacoma? Schools are getting a lot better than they were. There's a lot of investment in just the structure of the buildings, the teacher salaries, everything. So it's starting to improve, and just having graduates is higher than, like I said, in Seattle. When you look at niche.com, they give Tacoma a B+ overall. That's counting 6 different metrics and plus many things else, including cost of living, things like that. When it comes to public schools, they give it a B, a solid B. When it comes to good for families, like a family city, they give it also a B, which is pretty good. When it comes to nightlife, they give it an A-. So there's quite a bit of things to do. People have asked, is the nightlife there good? Coming from Indianapolis, which has a lot of nightlife, comparative, it seems, and it's kind of in a great location. Seattle didn't seem like it had a lot of great nightlife. I mean, it is, but it's kind of not that great in my opinion. Tacoma really doesn't have a lot in my opinion, but I guess for this area, they ranked it pretty high. And diversity, it gives it an A. Now, there's some cities where there's no grade when it comes to diversity, but for Tacoma, they give it an A. And that's one of the things that kind of, for some people, that's an issue. They don't like a lot of diversity. For other people, that's a great thing. They love diversity. One of the areas where you're going to see a C grade is in housing, because there's just not a lot of it. That's going to be kind of typical. And some of the housing that you see around here, because a lot of houses are rentals, and I'll go into more about that in a different video. But there's a lot of rentals in Tacoma because of, in the past, the economy. Some of that's becoming offloaded, so a lot of the rentals that exist are starting to become sold for, you know, people to actually buy and live in. But it, excuse me, I'm still fighting the flu. But it is still trying to move its way from being a mostly rental area in certain places to being homeowners. That changes things. Another place that has a C, it's got a C- grade according to them, is crime and safety. I can't disagree with that because, again, as I mentioned, Tacoma is ranked as being the most dangerous city in Washington state. Now, dangerous in terms of comparing it to what? If you go to Chicago, or if you go to Detroit, or you go to Gary, Indiana, you go to my hometown of Bowling Green, Kentucky, which has 60,000 people, about 60, 70,000 people. The crime rate in Bowling Green is going to be probably equal to that of Tacoma. In this area, 12 murders a year in a city that has over 200,000 people is not a huge, I mean, any amount of murder is bad. But when you look at the population size based on other areas, that's not a huge thing to be like, oh my goodness. There are other places, other cities that you would never even think of that has a much higher crime rate. And some of those have Ivy League schools in them. They have a much higher, and they're smaller cities. They have much higher crime rates. So when you look at the state of Washington overall, crime is not as bad in this particular state as it would be in some of the others. But then when you narrow that down and you look at per capita, Tacoma takes it. That is changing as crime is starting to go down quite a bit in pretty much all areas for Tacoma. It just takes time. Tacoma was in a very bad spot many, many years ago, and it took a while for it to actually climb up the hill, and it's climbing up that hill. Part of the problem with that is gentrification, which has wiped out large sections of the city. It happened quite a bit in Seattle. It's starting to happen quite a bit here. People are looking for a bargain. A lot of the people in Tacoma are born and raised here. That's different than what you see in Seattle. A lot of people that you come in contact with in Seattle are going to be from someplace else. It wasn't that they were born there and raised there. There are quite a few, obviously, but a lot of the people that you run into are going to say, hey, I came here 10 years ago. I came here 5 years ago. Tacoma is more like, if you run into someone, more than likely they were born and raised somewhere in Tacoma or pretty close to the area. That is starting to change slowly because a lot of the people here can't afford homes here now. You know, when you look at the value of homes, and this will tell you, I mean, it says the median average home is $203,000. That's incorrect. It's now at 300 and something thousand. I don't know when they actually pulled the report, and that's why I said some of this I don't agree with. The median rent, $947. That's incorrect because now it is well over $1,000. I think it's like 11 something. So Tacoma has changed quickly based on even when they actually pulled this report and ran it. So some of these things that you're going to see here are outdated. It could be that the crime rate has actually improved and the housing has improved as well as everything else on this list. So basically when you take a look at what's going on in Tacoma, a lot of shifting and moving has happened. It's kind of like people are moving south. Because if you go towards the east, things are very expensive. You have that whole Mercer Island, you have Bellevue and all of that, very pricey. Anything in and around Seattle is going to be pretty pricey. And then when you start to go kind of outward towards, you know, Issaquah and all of those places, still pricey. And so a lot of folks have to go south and towards the coast to avoid the high cost. The problem is there's not a lot of huge economic centers there, and I did a video that talks about DuPont being a really kind of a honey spot because it hits a lot of different metrics. It's actually ranked #1 on the list according to niche, or niche, however you want to call it. But it is standing at #1 because it gets all of the benefits of a lot of different things. It's close to a bigger city. It's got a lot of great schools, a lot of recreation and amenities and things like that. So it ranks pretty high, but that city is starting to be pretty expensive. So a lot of the folks that were born and raised in Tacoma are now shifting south towards places like Olympia and in Thurston County, which is the county south of Pierce. So Pierce County, it's kind of here. The far north you go, the more expensive it typically is. But also some of these other bedroom communities and surrounding areas are starting to feel the effects. People have talked about Bremerton and that type of thing, which Bremerton we'll talk about in a different video. But people are moving there now because they have easier access to Seattle. It was that, you know, hey, do I want to sit more than an hour on a ferry to get to and from work just one way to Seattle? Now they have the fast ferry, so things are changing and the price of everything is actually going up. So this is pretty much the ranking of Tacoma. Not as bad as what a lot of people think. It's actually improving every single year, and there's a lot of investment. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Also, one thing I want to touch on, it claims that people versus rent to own. Renters make up 49% and owners make up 51%. So it gives you kind of an idea. Don't know how accurate that is. But anyhow, that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and until next time, I will see you. Take care.